Hello everyone and welcome to the 32nd part of the CSS tutorial series, Grid Layout. The CSS grid layout offers a grid-based layout system with rows and columns, making it easier to design web pages without having to use floats and positioning. Let me give an example. And for this whole series, I've been using Visual Studio Code as my code editor. And if you need to learn more about VS Code, you can watch my VS based series and find the links in the description below. Let me add a template of our web page and let's name it CSS tutorial grid layout. Alright, and I'm also gonna add a link here. Link of style CSS. We have this index.html and this is style.css. And I'm also using the live server extension with Visual Studio Code. And let me turn our server on to show you what we have in this web page. This is our index.html, and let me keep both of them side by side. Alright, that's perfect. And now let's add a couple of divs here. Dot grid container. By the way, I use EMMET abbreviations a lot, and if you need to learn more about EMMET abbreviations to make your coding fast, you can watch my EMMET based series and find the links in the description below. And after that, I'm gonna add a couple of divs with class grid item, and I'm also gonna add numbers here, and there will be 8 items with text, say numbers. Alright, let me increase the size of our editor. So this is what we have right now, and let's go to style.css. First copy this class from here and target this class in our style.css. And if you need to learn more about this CSS, you can watch my CSS based series and find the links in the description below. To make it a grid layout, you need to use display property and set it to grid. And I'm also gonna add a background color here and set it to #00BDFE. And that's it. Let's add some padding here. 10 pixels. That's perfect. And let's give a style to our elements as well. So dot grid and target all the divs. Let's give them a background color of say #D8F2FF. It's safe. Alright, and let's add another property here, which is grid template column. Grid template columns, and with this property you can specify how many columns would you need. So in this case I'm gonna add 4 columns, and you can specify the size in pixels. And if you want all of the columns having same size, just specify here auto, and auto, and that makes sure that our container or our grid container has 4 columns. It's safe, and there it is. And let's add some gap between our columns and rows, say 10 pixels. That looks perfect. And I'm also gonna increase the font size to 30 pixels. Alright, and let's text align to the center, or let's add some padding as well. 10 pixels. Sorry, let's add some padding. 10 pixels. Hit save, and that looks much better now. So that gives us our first grid container, and there is more to go. Now, to make an HTML element behave as a grid container, you have to set the display property to grid, as we have set here, grid. And we have also added a property grid template columns, and you need to specify here the number of columns in terms of auto, or you can also make them, say if you want to make first column or third column of 30%, say 30%, first and third column to the 30%, and rest to auto. Save. So that's the result. Or you can also make them as pixels. Let's make it 100 pixels, or make our third column 200 pixels. Hit save, and here is the result. Now if you want to increase the size of your grid row, you can increase that with grid template rows. Let's make the first row auto and the second for 50 pixels, or let's make it 100 pixels. Now to align your whole grid inside grid container, let's make these guys to 50 pixels. 50 pixels, and again 50 pixels, again 50 pixels. Alright, and I'm also gonna make our rows to 50 pixels and 50 pixels. Alright, now let's align this whole grid to the center by adding a property here, justify content, and we have various options here. You can use center to center your grid, or say and. You can sign it and, or let's make it start. Now you have this remaining space, and if you want to divide it evenly around these columns, you can do that just by, we have properties here, say space evenly. The space is evenly divided before and after each of the columns. Or we have another property here, between, to divide the remaining space between the columns or around the columns. Now let's add a height to our grid container, say 500 pixels. And if you want to center this grid vertically, so for your main axis, which is right now is x-axis or the horizontal axis, you need to use justify content. Or if you need to align your grid along your cross axis, which is in this case the vertical axis, you need to use the property here, align content, and set it to center. Hit save, or you can set it to the end. Sorry, just end. or you can send it back to the start. Previously we discussed about the sizing. You can make your column 50 pixels, 100 pixels, but that's not the professional way to make a layout of your website or any application. There is a better way you can use, which is grid column property. And let's set this back to audio. And I'm also gonna, let's comment this out for now, and I'm gonna add some width and height to our elements, 100 pixels, and height as well. And let's space around. I'm gonna comment this out and start comment this out as well. Or let's clean this a bit. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm also gonna remove the height from here. Alright, so this is our grid container right now. So let's say if you want to make your first element as wide as 3 columns, you can do that just by adding a property here. Say first copy its class and paste it here, and let's add a property here, grid column, and here you will need to provide 2 numbers. Let me inspect our grid, and this opens the DevTools, and if you notice that there is a grid button, if you turn it on, it gives you visual representations of the column lines and row lines of your grid. So let's say if you want to make your first element span to column 3 and the line is number 4, let's make this column starts from 1 / and then 4. Hit save, and let me turn off our DevTools, and here it is. Or let's make it 5. So our first element spans to 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and we have a property here. That's the short for grid column start, or this is the same as, let's add grid column start 1 and grid column end to 5. That renders the same result, or you can use instead this property grid column that renders the same result. Or if you wanna define the span of the rows for any of the elements, say element number 2, let's make it element number 2, and I'm gonna define its, say, height. So add a property here, grid row, set it to start from 1 and ends 1, 2, and 3, followed by /3. Hit save, and this is starting from line number 1 to line number 3, or let's make it line number 4. Now we have another property, grid area. Say if you want to make, or let me comment this out for now. Let's take our second column and make this as wide as 2 columns and 2 rows. So let's add here a property, grid area, and it takes 4 numbers. First 2 numbers for row and column, the starting, and second 2 numbers for row and column, the ending. So in this case, the row and column starting would be row number 1, and column number 2, and then it will end to, let's turn our grid back on, and it ends on row number 5 and column number 4. It's safe, and let me turn off our grid. And this is the functionality of grid area. Now that's a bit confusing. There is another better way to make a layout of your web page by naming the grid items, and for that let's get a bit real. I'm gonna make some changes in our items here. Let's make this item header. The second item will be menu. This third item will be our main section, and this fourth item will be the right sidebar. This fifth item will be footer. And let's delete all of these guys, and let's copy these guys from here and paste them right here. And I'm gonna copy these guys from here and paste it right here. Okay, and let's add a period, and inside there I'm gonna name them as grid area. Grid area, and the name would be the grid item 1 will be header, item 2 will be menu, item 3 will be main, item 4 will be right, item 5 will be footer. And see what we have now. So here it is, and I'm gonna save this as well. And this messed up because we haven't added another property here, grid template areas. And to specify our areas within quotes, let's make our web page 6 columns wide. So I'm gonna assign all of these 6 columns of the first row to our header. Now let's paste header 6 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's safe. That's our header. And after that, in the next row, I'm gonna add our menu, then main, main, main for 3 columns, and for 2 columns that will be right sidebar. Alright, and at the end I'm gonna add menu, and for rest of the columns I'm gonna add footer. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Hit save, and here it is. So let me explain you that. First we added our items here. First item header, menu, main, right, and footer, and then we targeted all of these classes here in a style sheet, and we named them as header, menu, main, right, and footer. So previous method was a bit confusing. Now we can assign the grid areas as their names by specifying a property here, grid template areas, and here you need to specify the number of columns and number of rows where you want what items. So in the first row, for all of the 6 columns, we added header, and for the second row, for first column menu, and for next 3 columns main section, and the last 2 columns right sidebar. And for the last row, we added menu, so it makes menu spans 2 rows, and for rest of the columns we added footer as our grid template area. And that was all about a CSS grid. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.